Hi. I wanted to, it's late night, unusual for me now because I seem to have gotten out of the habit of doing late night videos, but certain things have been happening lately, and in spite of what other people think, I think that the world is in quite a mess at the moment, even though I do get people writing to me when I've said this, and when I've mentioned a few of the things that perhaps we should be concerned about. They say, "Why don't you just enjoy your life and not be concerned about these things?" But unfortunately, we do have to be concerned, and there is something that we can do to change the way that things are, and uh, one of them is speaking out. So when you see things that are not as you want them to be, as you think they should be, according to your beliefs, you really need to speak out. And I know it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy for anybody. I kind of get used to that response from people. They say, but it's different for me. No, it's not different for you. We all of us have the same problems, the same basic problem. There are no news stories, but there's a greater speed towards the edge of the abyss and beyond at the moment in the world. But I didn't want to, there's so many things that I really would like to talk about on the basis that I think people might be interested. But one of the things that is happening in my life at the moment, which it's strange. It's a heartbreaker, and yet it is an incredibly inspiring story. You know, there's always that story I told you of the little girl that I found in the dark area. I call it the dark area because it's underneath the big store, and it's like an indoor market, with lots of little vendors. And I found that little girl, Justine, and she was the one that had the big cyst on her face. And I went back to my truck and cried after that. After I met her, I didn't want to speak to her. I didn't want to offend her, but I wanted to know if there was something that I could do to help that kid. She is, I think, 15 years old now, and she had that thing on her face, which I couldn't imagine an otherwise pretty girl going through life with that. And she did come in, I learned later, she came in for quite a bit of bullying and teasing from people who had no heart. Well, I spoke, I'm digressing again, that's always what I do. But I spoke to her sister, what turned out to be her sister, and I said it quietly so that Justine would not hear me. I pulled her to one side. I said, and she said, I'm Justine's sister. I said, is she willing to do whatever it will take to have that thing removed from her face? I'm talking about something that really was big like this. And I learned later that if we didn't do something about it, it could quite possibly kill her. Well, her sister said, yes, she is. And the story then goes from there, and we did something, and with the benefit of help from the Choo Choo Foundation, which is, as the name suggests, a Chinese foundation, charity foundation, we were able to get that kid into surgery. It's been removed. So it's a tragic story at the beginning, but it turned out that kid was so brave. That any time I have a picture of her when she had the thing on her face, and we took her to a place called Mirror of the World, where a man with a vision had recreated in miniature all of these different places and things like Statue of Liberty and the Eiffel Tower and stuff like that. And it wasn't me that took the photo, but it's my favourite photo of Justine, because she is leaping into the air and the sense of joy is inescapable. And any time that I feel that my old bones are playing up, I look at that picture and I tell myself to shape up. But that's Justine, and she is a continuing inspiration to me. Now, because of the channel that Beth and I run, it's not, I know it's a foreigner in the Philippines, which just sounds like me, but it's actually Beth and I, and we both work at it. And we have a registered charity with which we help people now. Well, and all of that is another thing to talk about. It's easy to get off the subject. I have a friend. I did a Facebook post on this. I have a friend who is going through a terrible time at the moment. His name is John. I won't tell you where he will. I won't tell you now where he lives, but he lives in another country. And he has been taking care of his mother, who is stricken with Alzheimer's, and even before she started to die, which is now. She really didn't know John even, and he took care of her for 12 years. Now, at the start of that 12 years, the NHS, giving it away now, but the British Medical Service wanted to take her into a care home. And John is a man of very, very strong opinions about things. He's an educated man because he studies world situations, and he is, like me, very disturbed at the moment about what's happening in the world. Well, he fought them on that and brought his mother home. And for 12 years, he has been his mother's full caregiver. And this is unusual for a man to be able to do this. Several people that I've spoken to, several men that I've spoken to, have lost their mother in the same way, or their mother is now in care, and they were unable to do certain things. When it's your mother or your father, sometimes it's very difficult to be able to do things which maybe you could do, in the case of a man, things that he could do for his wife, but for his mum, it's not so easy. You know, when Beth's father died, Gulion is her brother. Gulion lives in Cebu, and he is an embalmer, and so he's quite used to the whole act of cutting open a dead person and taking out those parts that shouldn't be there in the embalming thing, and be able to preserve them for a sufficient time until they're buried. They wanted him to, when the father died, he said, "I can't do it to my own father." But John is different, and he has done everything for his mother, include everything from feeding her to bathing her to washing her to taking her to the toilet. He's done everything. I call him the good son. I call him the good son because in a way he makes me feel shameful about the way that I was not a good son to my own mother. But if anybody can make up for someone else's sins, he's done it for me. And we've communicated almost every day. Now, apart from being the caregiver to his own mother. He has also, what I also call him, is Hardcore John, because Hardcore John sends me lots of information about what is happening in the world. And one of the big things that's happening in the world at the moment is censorship. Now, how can you enforce censorship on a people? Well, it helps a great deal if you control all of the media, newspapers, television stations. If you control all of this, then all of the social media too, then you can enforce. You can enforce on a reluctant people, on an unwilling people, you can enforce censorship. And once you have censorship, then you have essentially, of course, by definition, you have you have taken away the freedom of speech. And if there is no freedom of speech, then we're in real trouble. And the next thing that you can do is you can prohibit people from gathering in large groups, because when people gather in large groups, they gain strength from each other, and that's when governments start to get in trouble. If they are imposing unfair, unjust laws on the people, like it really is we the people employing a government to handle those things which we don't have time for. I don't have time to make sure that there's a water supply and that an electricity company is providing power. I don't have time for those. I'm busy leading my life and doing what I can with what I have. So you could say we need governments, but we want fair governments. Now, that's where John comes in. And John knows what has been happening. And as I say, because you have censorship, then once you have censorship and you have outlawed free speech, how can you outlaw free speech? You can forbid people to use certain words. You can also, as is happening at the moment, you can enforce the use of words which people may not agree to, like pronouns. And you can also make it so that they can't voice their disagreement with the way that something is. And that's happening now, isn't it? With very, very, very basic things like the education of our children in school on sex. So nowadays, what is happening, what is evolving, or devolving maybe I should say, is that sex education has been changed to sexuality education. So now, it's difficult to get this over to someone who is in the Philippines because this particular trend has not reached the Philippines yet. Heaven forbid that it ever should. But this education is now taking place in many parts of the US. It's being fought in many parts of the US, but very small children are being asked to process things about sexuality, gender, and they're being asked to consider that this is a choice. So you're taking children who are unable to do as you suggest and think about things like homosexuality and lesbianism and transgenderism, and the idea that perhaps even though they think they're a little boy or a little girl, maybe there's something that they haven't thought of, and maybe they should be trying everything before they decide which one they are. Bring me back to John. And back to John, his mother is dying. Now, You have to understand right now, there's a difference between depression and sadness. There's a difference between loneliness and being alone. There's a difference in lots of words to what we may think. It's not depressing to feel melancholy about something. And the fact that we enjoy having our emotions brought to the surface and experienced is evident in movies. You go to see a sad movie. You can go to see a sad movie about someone who is dying. And what will come through is the loss of that person with the accompanying gift that it brings. And that is the inspiration to live a better life. Now, as I said, for 12 years, John has taken care of his mother in every single way. He has sat and held her hand when she's frightened and can't express the words. He is the good son. And now is a bittersweet time. When I posted, I just had a message from him now, and he had to go offline because the pastor is already kind of knocking at the door to give the last final rites to his mother. And why this was bittersweet? Because he has seen her suffering. She hasn't known who she is or who he is or who anybody is for many years. And he has seen the decline, and he has seen even greater decline because his stepfather, his mother's husband, has insisted that they have certain jabs, which I'm sure that you will know about. And one of the things that he observes is a dumbing down from having the later many boosters. And he has seen how it has taken the toll on his stepfather and on his mom as well. I have to say that his mom is in her 90s, so in my heritage they always say, oh, she's had a good innings then, 90, which of course she has, and she's had the final years taken care of with love and loyalty and affection from her son. So she's had that to be thankful for. So now she is almost comatose, and the nurses are coming and they're doing something which John is in an agony of remorse and doubt, because he knows what happens in hospitals and in care homes for the elderly. When it really gets to a point where it's considered the best things, then there is such a thing as a kill shot. And what's given is, I think it's either midazolam or midazolam, whichever you choose to pronounce it. And that, together with morphine, will hopefully gently bring a merciful death or passing. We have to dress these things up, don't we? We can't say death. We can say, oh yes, my mother has passed. Which maybe that's a good thing, and maybe it's not. I know that almost anybody that is watching this now and managed to get to this far has already said goodbye to either their mother or their father or a much-loved uncle or aunt, or in some cases even a sister or a brother. And death is always a hard thing to actually process, isn't it? Because nobody's ever done it and come back and told us, hey, it wasn't so bad. So now John is watching, and his mother has had an injection, and it will hopefully eventually make it possible for her to let go and do what I think of as the last journey home, to meet her maker. What's that song in America? Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to go right now. So I wanted to do this not just as a tribute to John, but as a farewell to his mom, who unfortunately I don't know her name. And she is now on the point of struggling, kind of like one foot in this life and one foot as the first step. And the people that have been close to me, where their family has been around them, but still being able to speak, they are the lucky ones. If even in their weakest moment, they're able to communicate, at least with their eyes. I don't blink their eyes once for yes and twice for no. There are ways to do it. And the family that were closest to me were one that adopted me when I was in the army, a young man in the army. And I went cleaning windows to earn some extra money. Yeah, you can do that when you're in the army if you have enough time off. And there was this particular family that took me in and treated me like an extra son. And when Mona, the mother, died, the family were around her and they held her hand and they all said their goodbye. They all told the mother that they loved her and that it was okay to leave. It was okay to leave. And so now John is faced with this dilemma that he knows very well what goes into end-of-life treatment for people in care homes. And he has that dilemma that he doesn't want to go through the rest of his life thinking that he took his mother's life, even for merciful reasons, and yet he doesn't want her to suffer. And this is being enacted the world over, and this is where we're at. So John, God bless, and to John's mother, Godspeed. And I will end up on a story that I read a long time ago in Reader's Digest. Can you believe? There used to be a book called Reader's Digest, like a small magazine, and it had the most charming stories in it. And one of the stories that I read, which I always kept with me, was that a hospice were helping this family to process that the baby that they'd had, that wasn't very old, just a few months old, was dying, and that it wouldn't be long. Now the problem was that as adults they had learned to face this, but they had a little girl and they were worried how it would affect her. So she was a lovely kid, about 4 or 5, I guess, and came the day that they knew pretty well that the little boy was going to die, pass. And so they told the little girl, now it's the time, we've been telling you and we've been explaining to you, haven't we, how your brother is going to heaven. And it seems like today is the day. He's going to heaven today. And now is the time when you can go in and you can tell him the things that you want him to know so that he can go knowing he was loved. So the little girl listened to all of this, and they let her go in by herself but they stood at the door and listened to what she said. And she went in and she held the little boy's hand and she said, "Mum and Dad told me that you're going to heaven today. And they've told me that there's nothing for you to worry about because it's going to be easy. You just let go here and you'll go to heaven. And there's all kinds of things in heaven, angels and God is there. You'll just love it there. So I don't want you to worry. Now, I just want to tell you that when you've gone, when your soul has gone, I won't let them flush you down the toilet like they did with the goldfish." So thanks for listening. I know that this, for a lot of people, won't be an easy one. It's not an easy one for me. John's mum is still holding on tenaciously and struggling, and I'm hoping that once the pastor has been today and said a prayer which is designed, if such a thing can be, is designed to allow the woman to let go. So that's what we're hoping for today. So Godspeed, Mother. Bye for now.